Hello, everyone, and welcome to our HR at the Heart event, our fifth one of the series. And I think we're starting to really enjoy these now. We're starting to have some really interesting conversations with everyone. Hi to Grace Garvey, who's just joined us, and Suzanne Flynn, and Catherine, and Fiona, and Connie, and everyone else here today. Great to see everyone back again for what is essentially just a forum for us all to discuss some of the impacts and the biggest changes in working practices we've seen in over a century. So we've covered a lot of topics like reducing isolation, some of the ideas around professional isolation, and lots of other effects that some of this COVID stuff is happening on the workforce, but also some of the things that may be based on what we were projecting into the future as to what the future workforce might look like and how people would work in the future. Today we're joined by a very special guest, John Fitzgerald. John is a pioneer in the field of career management and author of Future-Proof Your Career. He's developed the Future Readiness methodology. I'm sure all of you are very familiar with him. And he has developed that methodology as a digital post for organizations and individuals. So we're very excited and honored to have John join us today. And as well as John, of course, we're joined by our own CEO, Aisling Tayard, who has been instrumental in our conversations over the last 5 weeks, and really enjoyed hearing Aisling's point of view on all of this. But more importantly, if I can say that, we want to hear your contributions. So again, it's a discussions. We have our chat functionality here on Zoom, so we could get started with that. But again, remember the reaction button to give us the thumbs up. You can find that at the bottom of your screen, and just give us a thumbs up or a round of applause. So that we can have a bit of interaction here. And also, we wanted to start with a question for all of you today that you could answer in the chat forum there. So just open up the chat and let us know, what are the major emotions that you're experiencing at this time? What are the emotions that you're experiencing at this time? And just to kind of cue you up with a few samples that John was discussing earlier, things like fear, anger, trust, excitement. What are those emotions that you're experiencing? And do contribute that that emotion, one or two that you're experiencing, because John and Aisling will kind of deal with that during our presentation today and our discussion today. And we can maybe pick it up in the questions and answers into about 20 minutes into today's session, which will end at 12:30. So without further ado, again, thanks to John for joining us, and Aisling, thank you for, again, facilitating the discussion. And please, over to you.
Hi guys. So yeah, I wanted to share with you I guess my insights on what we're seeing with organizations going through change at the moment. And I thought I'd start with my daughter and her behavior hack that she shared with me yesterday evening. I was saying that I was doing a talk today, and she showed me her phone, and she said, you know, Dad, I'm learning an awful lot through this time, and you know, person one, not learning through change, and person two, I'm learning to bake, I'm learning to cook. This is me in the passenger seat. She's had her L plates up since December, so we started driving through the countryside, and we've been restricted with our driving movements, but it's interesting to be out of control and in the passenger seat. And I think it's an interesting segue for us to think about the pandemic and COVID, that we all have our L plates on at the moment, and we're all a little bit outside control. So it's a mindset thing around how we react to that. And what I want to cover today is really what are the emotions that we're experiencing right now, and what are we seeing in our workspaces. So can you see the slides there?
Yeah, we can see them fine. Yeah. And just to let you know, actually, John, just to say that some of the emotions that have come back from everyone, we have gratitude, anxiety, a couple of grateful people who are feeling excitement and anticipation, mixed emotions coming from fear over anxiety to excitement and gratitude. A lot of people are feeling overwhelmed and angry, disjointed. So lots of emotions happening, and Antonina has a longer comment that we might ask her about a bit later about how she's reacting to all of this.
Very good. So a real sway of emotions there. So interestingly, I was facilitating an offsite on the 12th of March, exactly 2 months ago, with a team around their leadership strategy and how they would align their people for the future when Leo Varadkar made the announcement on TV, and we had to break up the session at lunchtime, and they had to go and think about how they were going to manage all of the social distancing, etc. But I think, you know, the Black Swan event has taken us all by surprise, and it's really interesting that we've never lived through anything like this before. So when we go through change, we can normally associate it with something else from our past and our memory. So as I say, we're all in L-plate learning zone at the moment, and I think that's something that we've got to think about is, you know, have we a reference point for this, and what reference point are we using? I spoke in the intro about words make worlds, and these are some of the new words that I'm seeing, the pandemic words that we really never were thinking about in the past. Restricted movement, essential, non-essential worker, classifying us as workers into two different groupings. Stay home, stay safe. Boris might say stay alert, avoid non-essential travel, and that 2 meters, 2 kilometers, 5 kilometers. And all of those words are all around detachment and dependence, almost on the state and on the medical advisory on what we can and what we can't do. And again, as you're seeing there in some of the emotions, it's leading to anxiety and fear and anger amongst lots of us. And we're in a survival mode. But if we think about the pre-pandemic world and our human-human connection, you know, the handshake, the embrace, the hug, you know, I call on to my mother and I miss that hug with her in the evening. She's living on her own. The freedom of movement, you know, Dan Pink, autonomy, mastery, purpose. The world was such a small place, we could travel to anywhere in the world. And I learned again about speed restrictions when I was in the passenger seat with my daughter around the speed restrictions, but they were the only restrictions we had in life. So when we think about our organizations and where we want to bring people from a HR perspective, we normally think about attachment and attachment to our customers, to our internal teams, to get them to thrive and to move into a state of interdependence. But we're having to deal with this pandemic words, and it's having a different impact on us as humans. And you've got to think about us as humans. We evolved in tribes. We evolved through social connection. And that's how we fought danger in the past, was we grouped together and we got together to deal with that danger. But now it's different. We've got to self-isolate. And I wanted to share this from neuroscience that we understand about our 8 primary emotions. And if you're familiar with the movie Inside Out, it brought these emotions to life, or some of them anyway. And this is an image of an emometer. And if you look at the middle of the emometer, it has the potentiator emotion of surprise, startle. And I think that's what's happened with this pandemic. The surprise, startle has happened. And then we look to the left, and a lot of us flipped into the escape avoidance emotions, as would be what we do as humans. We trigger our self-preservation. So we have 5 survival emotions: fear, anger, disgust, shame, and sadness. It's interesting actually that disgust was derived from our way that we've preserved ourselves from infection, believe it or believe it not. So those emotions are very prevalent in our environments right now, and they're being triggered not just once but quite often. I know that I found myself staying away from the nightly news and trying to self-regulate myself away from being triggered back into these emotions. And when I hear the nightly news or I hear Sky and it's consistently drama unfolding, I start to go into those anger emotions or sadness emotions. And we all as humans have the ability to self-regulate and to move over to the attachment emotions of excitement, joy, and love and trust. And this is where we want our organizations to be, is in this space, but we're struggling with the survival emotions at the moment. And our brains are an organ of relationship, and we're responding to this external and internal stimuli all the time. So it's a battle of our emotions. So it's just important for us to understand what we ourselves are going through, what narrative and self-talk and the voices that we're hearing in our heads, how are they impacting us as we go about our work? So I think it's a really simple image to use with our teams and with our people. And I talked again in the preview to this around the change curve. And when we're coaching people through change, and I'm sure lots of the HR people on the call have used this Kubler-Ross change curve to help people to manage through change. And I've done it, for example, in coaching people through job loss or through organization change. And there's one trigger point. So my father passed away last September. It was a trigger point, and I would have experienced all of those emotions and moving on from those emotions. But what Kubler-Ross accepted towards the end of her life was that the stages are not linear and a predictable progression. It's how we deal with grief. And I guess it's being used for a lot of change programs. But back to what I say about the nightly Sky News, and every time we turn on the radio, we get a new trigger. It's not just one trigger, there's lots of triggers. So I would see this change being a wave of emotions that we're experiencing. And, for example, if someone leaves a coaching session from me and they're adapting and they're accepting to the change, they can go out into that external environment and come back to me in 2 weeks' time and they're in depression or anger. And I feel that they've moved on, but they've moved back because somebody has impacted their environment and their stimuli. So it's just important for us to realize that our people are going through these change curves in waves, but it's not predictable and it's not a simple, change curve that we go through once. We go through it in waves. We were doing some work and I've been collating feedback on the remote working and the positives and negatives that I'm seeing. So the negatives that we're seeing, we're not getting the stimulation from each other. It's harder to read people, to use all of the senses, to look for the visual clues. If I were in a room with you all now, I'd be reading some of the body language, taking more time to message online versus go up to somebody's desk and ask a question. Our routines and our rhythms, when we go to work, whether it's on a Lewis or whether it's on a bus or a train or a car, we have a certain routine and rhythm built into our everyday. They've changed. I'm hearing a lot from people around mental fatigue. The intensity of the work has increased. It's energy draining. How do I keep myself motivated when I'm in isolation? I can't maybe go to the water cooler and have that chat and that laugh to maybe get some of those attachment emotions that I spoke about earlier. Managers feeling they're losing control. They can't see their people and they're wondering what they're doing. The desire to go back to normal. And then some leaders speaking about the productivity drop-off. The meetings are getting longer. So, is there an expectation we should be still at the same productivity and business as usual? And the desire for structure and social connection. So these are all the things that we're hearing on the negative side. And then when we move over to the positive side, there's more virtual check-in meetings. So I've definitely seen that people and teams are checking in more regularly and maybe seeing each other, remote teams, more often than they might have before. I was working with a client and they said that they have guided themselves through this change with two key principles, clarity and care. So we're seeing a lot more care and compassion in the workplace. That distractions are accepted. We've seen children wandering into Zoom calls. We've seen pets coming into Zoom calls. We are all able to work from home. One organization leader said to me, we've 2,000 people, and who would have told me 2 months ago that all of them would be working on site? So now we've learned that we can adapt quickly. And maybe some of these changes were changes that we wanted to bring in, but they've happened an awful lot faster. Change is possible. And I think for HR leaders, these are times to witness that change, to note that change, and to say change is possible more so than before. That we're more accepting of people who experiment and fail. That it's leveled the playing field. At one organization, and they're in an Irish location and they're reporting into a European HQ, and they're saying, well, it's leveled the playing field. There is no HQ at the moment. We're all working from home. So we all have a great opportunity to influence. And we're seeing people in the home environment and more human side. And a group of grads actually said, gratitude. That was something that one of our coaches said to me yesterday. We're grateful to have a job. So what I wanted to share was a toolkit around future readiness and our resilience for change. And this is a future of work globe that we have developed for the last number of years. And if you look at the globe, it's the whole nature of a globe is that it's continually evolving, and organizations are evolving, individuals are evolving, and the future world of work is evolving. So I think there are three dimensions at play here when we think about the future of work and this globe. And we look on the left-hand side and we see what individuals can supply, and we look on the right-hand side and we see what's in demand now by organizations. So we break this into 5 categories, and we look at the top left-hand corner of personal mastery. And I liken this to the circle of control and influence. So, I can control my personal mastery. What are the things I need to learn about myself? I can control my mood, my energy, the knowledge I share, the way I work, the skills that I have. That's within my control. And then we move over to the right-hand side, to our internal market, to our organization. So what can we do to respond and to influence through change? And one of the things we've been working with organizations is around the narrative that we're using to describe this time. Are we using, going back to my daughter's behavior hack, are we seeing this as a time of desperation and of survival? Or are we seeing this as a time when we can actually influence the change and we can change the narrative? We can seek opportunities to grow and develop. And one of the things that we're working with people is, how can you help people to grow and develop in this time, rather than just accept that, well, maybe business as normal will come back in September, October. And then down in the bottom right, external environment, the big picture perspective. And, quite a lot of that, like what's heard on the nightly news, is outside of our control. But there is stuff that we need to be thinking about in relation to how is all of this change going to impact our sector, our profession, our organization. What's changing right now, and what change is accelerating that we didn't see coming before this Black Swan event. And that moves us down to the bottom left, to professional development, and seeking, to develop and learn at this time, so that the last category in the bottom is proactive readiness, that we're ready to take advantage of this change. And we've developed this toolkit to help people to become more aware. We've built 20 questions into it. So it allows you to use those coaching questions to reflect on yourself, the environment in which you operate in your organization, and also to be mindful of the external environment. So I think it's something for us to take away as a way to proactively manage change and to respond and to influence through change. So, we've created a global benchmark, and people can take the assessment, find out their scores in each of those 5 categories, and can come away with a greater self-awareness of how they're responding and managing themselves through the change. But it's all about the words that we use and the narrative and our resilience for change. So the link is on futurecareerreadiness.com. It's free for any individuals to go in and to complete it. What we've done is we've also created a data set so that an organization can profile their people around how future ready they are right now, and can understand where they are around their aspirations, and where are the areas that they need to develop for the future under those 5 categories. So it's a free index, completed for yourself, but from a HR perspective, there's a whole future workforce readiness index that can be assessed. And we have the white paper that we can share on the study, that our first study. We're coming up to our second study on future workforce readiness in the near future. And obviously people can link on the book. And one thing that's, I was thinking about what's keeping me going through this time, and my purpose. And I think we all have different job titles, but one thing that I've become more aligned to at this time is my purpose. And my purpose is helping people to future-proof when every line of work is changing. And I keep going back to that and saying, what am I here to do and to serve others to help them with? And I think the more we can use this time to become more aligned with our purpose, the greater chance we have of getting through this and moving into those attachment emotions. So that's just a whistle-stop tour, I guess, through through my thoughts, and I'm happy to take any questions or chats that you might have.
That's
Thanks,
great. Well,
John.
thank you. Aisling, maybe you fire away, and I can maybe read out a few of the questions to you, and we can involve the audience then.
Yeah, absolutely. Just a huge thanks, John, for opening up so personally as well. It's rare that we get a speaker giving us such an insight into their own lives, and I thought that was great to hear that vulnerability and authenticity from you, which is very much why I admire you. I'm fascinated as well about that journey of self-awareness, and it's one of my big hooks too, is kind of trying to support people to accelerate self-awareness, and that's kind of one of the grand purposes of Tandem, really. And I just wanted to tease it out with you a little further in terms of, with those triggers that drive self-awareness, because you see that big acceleration in growth and development right now. Talking to my clients, they're seeing massive uptake on e-learning platforms that they wouldn't have seen great engagement before, and they're seeing people accelerate. And I was talking to one of the CEOs of one of our clients last week, and he was saying he sees much wider engagement and communication. So divisional leaders who only spoke to their people maybe once a quarter are now speaking to their people every week. He's like, engagement has never been so good. The communication in this organization has never been so good. But of course, it's all time consuming, and it's a much different pace of work than they would have been used to. But time will tell whether that's sustainable or not, or whether it's a short-lived thing that passes when COVID passes. But what are you seeing from that perspective? Are you seeing that there's a greater awakening of engagement, communication, self-awareness in organizations now, or do you think it's a little bit early for those things to really emerge, but maybe they're the outcome of all of this?
I think that organizations, depending on the sector that you're in a different space. Some organizations are business as usual, and other organizations are using it as a time to connect better with their people. And I definitely am seeing a lot more communication between leaders virtually with their teams. And I think this, getting for leaders to get used to communicating with their people, more often. I would like to think that that's going to continue. I wonder, and I wonder, will we go back to our own habits? And I think this is causing an inflection point for us all to think and to reflect. What pace of life were we going at before? And is this a time for us to take stock right now? And then the survival emotion of fear flips in and said, well, I can't be spending too much time thinking about this. I've got to get into action, and I've got to do my work. So I think there's this tag between wanting to kind of stay in that space to reflect, but also to get work done. And do I need to work? That's what we're seeing with the work intensity, that it's actually upped. And people are striving to do the best they can in the limited circumstances in which we now operate. And I think that's a great sign of people, and I've definitely seen it with my own team here, that people are, they're committed to the organization, and they want to show us that they can, that they have more to offer. And I think this is a time to tap into those emotions of connection, and for us to see the more human side to leaders, as I said, that it's not the person in the ivory tower on the 6th floor. This is the person who's in their home office, and they're sharing how they're going through this and being very human. So I think this is an opportunity for humanity to increase in the workplace, but I just hope that we don't go back to maybe the good old bad ways.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Andrew, I'm conscious of letting other people into the conversation, so I'll hand over to you.
It's probably a good time to open it up to discussion. I wouldn't mind just, I don't want to volunteer anyone in particular, but Antoni, I can't say your name, I'm sorry.
Yes, hi Andrew. I don't know if you're already hearing me, right?
I'm sorry about my mispronunciation of your name, but
that's fine.
I thought maybe we could start with you and your description of what your experience has been.
Yes, I will do some act of, bravery, because I wasn't prepared to turn on the camera, but it seems unpolite, to speak without it. Wow, someone is having, yeah. Yeah, so I was saying that during last 2 weeks there were lots of opportunities to go online, so I enjoyed so many live, like online courses in Coursera, for example. There is like resilience in times of uncertainty and things like that, so which are from Yale and Penn universities. So I never thought of it, and I always thought it's like you have to have time, there should be like some budget or something like that. But actually, and I've seen some of the comments here in the chat, that it kind of fluctuates. So 1 week you're like really high up, and then something just knocks you off. Like, for example, we had an internal communication in the team, and everyone shared that it's kind of tough, you know, some people feel worried, and I didn't before I heard them, and then I was like, for the whole day I was like reflecting on it and so on. So for me, John, I would ask for if there are like small things, tiny things that you can do immediately to help yourself. That would be like one of the questions I'm interested in. Not like, because we all know like permanently it's great to have a goal and so on, but for me a fantastic thing would be something little but that I can do right now to stop this catastrophizing and, you know, to stop things. And thank you guys for this great event. Thank you for the opportunity.
I think, Antonia, it's stopping to check in with yourself and to observe the emotions that you're feeling. And it is, you know, it might be just going out for a walk in nature. I know that I'm doing a lot more of that at lunchtime, to just go for a walk for 30 minutes. I would never have done that in the past. And it's giving yourself the time to observe yourself and what you're experiencing. And our challenge with our current work environment, you know, prior to this was back-to-back meetings. And I don't think we gave ourselves the opportunity to spend the time with ourselves to check in on how we were experiencing this. So, for example, one of the things that I've done for myself is to build a fitness routine in the morning before I have breakfast, to get myself a coach to help me to just get more mindful in my state. These are the type of things I was promising myself that I would do up to this, but they're simple things that we can do, and as you say, you don't have to sign up for a degree or to do an online master's on this. These are simple life hacks that we can use to take control. But the thing is, you do it one day, then can you continue that? Can you sustain it? And I think these are, you know, it's good sometimes to have an accountability partner. I'm doing some walks at night now, and my neighbour, we've got into almost a competition around how many kilometres we're going to walk each night. We set ourselves a goal for the month. But so it's just a simple life hack, whether it's mind, it's body, it's spirit, but it's checking in on how you're feeling.
Thank you so much.
Wonderful. I think we're coming close to the end. We're always very respectful of people's time at this in this time. So we have one more question for you, John and Aisling, from Peter Fitzpatrick. Any advice on dealing with the introvert-extrovert dynamic?
Well, I actually have a couple of introverts working with me on the team, and they quite like working remotely normally anyway, and they work 2 days from home and 3 days in the office. And but I think anything overdone can become a weakness, and they're now seeking to have more social connection than they would have prior to this. So that's it. I think on the extrovert, I think I'm an extrovert, and I'm feeling really challenged by not having the same amount of connection in the workplace. But you know, I think it's just stepping into the shadow side of our personalities and to understand them a little bit more at this time.
Great. Well, I've been fascinated by this conversation. Really enjoyed it and appreciated your sharing both your own stories and some of the experiences you've had. And certainly I'll be taking the index test after this. So if anyone else would like to follow up, do get in touch after this event. But for now, I think we'll draw things to a conclusion. We're happy to follow up with anyone afterwards. And John, I'm sure if anyone gets in touch, we'll just refer them on to you if they want to continue the conversation. Anything last to add, guys, before we wrap it up?
A big thanks to John. Maybe just to mention that next week we have Angel Hoover, who's the Managing Director of Willis Towers Watson, and she's going to share with us some really interesting data on employee experience trends since COVID hit. So I think that's going to be a fascinating look at some of the data, surprising data that's emerging out of it. But a massive big thank you to John. I think that was just the most wonderful, almost intimate session, despite the fact that we're all on Zoom and we can't see each other. So you've created a lovely space for us to share with each other, and a big thank you for that. And I think some of the tools that you've recommended are wonderful. So thanks again, everybody, for tuning in, and hopefully we'll see you all next Tuesday at the same time. Next Tuesday, yeah, just Angel Hoover, Managing Director of Willis Towers Watson, and that report they came out with about employee engagement. It's really fascinating, and really hope you can all make it next week. So thanks a million, guys. We'll see you again next week, Tuesday, 12 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.